right, Happy New Year. This month, a new bag pattern is coming out for Pattern of the Month, and it's called the Weekender Bag. So I want to show you a little bit about the bag, and then I'm going to show you two ways to line it. It's a little bit tricky to show, so I thought I'd make a video to make it easier for you. The Pattern of the Month system works. You can sign up for to get patterns emailed to you every month, and you can just log in, download them, and every first of the month new patterns come out. So since it's January 1st, there are 3 new patterns. Every month there will be a quilt pattern, a bag pattern, and then a mystery pattern. And this month there are actually some bonuses too. So if you sign up for the mystery pattern, you get actually 2, women's and a kid size head wrap turban. It's really cute. And then if you're signed up for the full subscription, which is called the Platinum subscription, you also get these cute labels. Can't really see them. So they're SVG files or PDF files for creating labels for your sewing room so you can organize them. So since it's January, I thought we'd do an organization theme there. And then this Weekender bag, so this is the Weekender bag, and it's the bag pattern of the month, which is included in the Bag Pattern of the Month subscription and the Platinum full subscription. Now the Bag Pattern of the Month, if you're just getting the Bag Pattern of the Month, it's $8 monthly, or you can pay $79 a year, and that'll save you even more money. And then if you're getting the full subscription, you'll get 3 patterns for $19.99 a month, or this month you get 2 bonuses, so it's actually 5 patterns. So that's a great deal, and you can cancel anytime, so there's not like a hardcore commitment there. And if it's after January, this bag pattern will be available full price in my shop. So a couple ways you can get the pattern, but I love this bag because it's big. You can tell that it's really big, and it's going to be great. I'm going to make one for each member of my family, so we have a quick weekend bag that compresses so we can shove them in the car and go for a little weekend trip. I like soft bags because they don't, unlike a bulky suitcase, they don't squish. So this bag will squish for you. So on the outside, so the top has a zipper panel, and then there are 2 side pockets. These are great for water bottles, and there's elastic on the sides there to hold stuff. And then there's a big pocket in the front, which I think is a great pocket for your cell phone or just stuff you might need if you're on an airplane or in the car. And I lined this with polka dot. Oh, you can't really tell. It's cute. And then on the outside, it does look a little bit like a face when you have that pocket opened. On the outside there's 2 handles, and then these are leather accents. Now you can make these with fabric if you want, but I use leather. And included in the pattern is also an SVG file. If you have a Cricut, you can cut the leather out with your machine instead of doing it by hand. But if you don't, you can do it by hand too. And then there's an adjustable strap, and this has a bar slide and some lobster clips and D-rings. So there's some hardware, but it's pretty easy hardware to install. And then I'll show you on the inside. I stuffed it with fabric, or batting. I stuffed it with batting. So I'll show you the inside. Here's the zipper lining. And then on this side, there's a divided pocket with 2 slots, and these are not zippered, so you just kind of grab what you need from there. And then the other side has a zippered welt pocket. So this is good for like flight information or stuff that you really don't want to get smashed around. And then you can see I lined the main bag or the inside with the same fabric as the outside. So for quilting cotton, I just recommend you use a Pellin Shape Flex interfacing to make it a little bit sturdier. And then I actually use a double zipper on the top here, so I love that. Okay, so now I'm going to show you how to line it. I've created another bag almost done. Alright, so this is the second bag that I'm going to show you, and this one I'll show you how to line it. And I've made this out of a mustard yellow velvet. This kind of has a 70s vibe to it. And then the handle accents are a brown leather, so that's kind of fun. And then the lining is made of a lawn. This is a Riley Blake floral lawn, and it's really pretty. So this velvet is a little bit of a floppy velvet, so I did interface it with Pellin, and it just gives it a little bit more stability, but of course the lining will help with that too. So there are two methods in the pattern file for lining this, and I always like to give the easiest method first, and I just assume that if you're more advanced at bag sewing, you can do it how you want. But I did include a second, nicer finish as well. So the first finish is the easier one, and what we need to start with is so you open the zipper and then turn the bag inside out, and then you will turn the lining right side out. So you'll have the lining right sides out, and then the main bag inside out, and then you'll slip the lining over the main bag. Now it doesn't matter which side the pockets are on. And in the instructions, it has instructed you to prep this by doing ease stitching on the side panel right here, and also along the top curve. And it's especially important with a thin fabric like lawn because it does stretch more than a lot of other fabrics, and so I will probably use that ease stitching to help it. Okay, so now we're going to match up. The curves are going to match up really well, and I'm going to show you this. I'll show you this from a few different angles so you can really see it. So we're matching the side panel up with the side panel of the lining. The main bag, so lining, main bag right here. And then this curved side is just going to line up right along the curved side of the main fabric. So it's going to line up with the other lining fabric that's on the sides of the zipper. So we finished the zipper including the zipper side lining already, and that gives it a really nice sturdy look, and it also is really functional because we made sure all the lining's out of the way. And that leaves us with this raw edge right here. So we're bringing these together, and I'll zoom in here in a second. And so this method's going to give you a raw finish on the inside, and you can bind it later or serge it or just leave it raw, but it is a much easier method than the second method. Alright, so I'm going to start over again. So this zipper lining right here is what we're going to match up with on the other side of the seam allowance. So kind of going to sandwich them together, starting right where the zipper tab ends with the side. And so we have sewn an ease stitch 3/8 inch, which is the seam allowance from the raw edge on the zipper side. So you're going to fold that under and then put it on top of this seam allowance. So we're going to cover it up so that will be a nice finish there. And then we're going to pin it just like that. So I'm going to do that. So that ease stitching really helps you get a nice clean edge there. And then over here we're going to have to kind of pivot a little because we're going from a clean finished edge to a raw edge. But right here the seam allowance is showing, and we're just going to line up the seam allowance, the raw edge of the lining fabric with that seam allowance. Okay, and you can use clips for this. Sewing clips are great for the curves. And if you need to pull that ease stitching that you have in the lining fabric, go ahead and do that. And you'll especially need to do that around the curves. So I'm going to show you just how to finish that, and then I'll show you the second method. And the second method won't leave you with this raw edge. So if you want a little bit of a nicer look, that's what you can do. So I'm going to stick a pin in this thread and then pull it a little bit. Now E-stitching is regular length stitching, so about 2.5 millimeters, and it's typically done at the seam allowance. So since our seam allowance is 3/8 inch, that stitching is done right on the seam allowance, and that makes sure that that fabric doesn't stretch right where you're attaching it to another piece of fabric. So because I knew that the lawn would probably need to be tugged, you don't always need to tug E-stitching, sometimes just stitching it creates the effect you need. But since I knew that I would probably need to tug it since it's such a thin lawn fabric, I actually did more of a base with like a 4 millimeter stitch length just to make it a little easier. But you can choose to do that however you want. Alright, so I'm just clipping along. I'm using these are knockoff Wonder clips. I'm just clipping it along, and that is giving me that lined bag with a raw edge inside of it along that curve. Alright, so hopefully you can see that. And then when you get to the other side of the side panel, so the side of the bag has a side panel, we're just going to do exactly what we did before, and that is fold that edge over and pin it again. Now at this point I probably want to clip this zipper and some extra threads. Should have done that before. Okay, so I'm turning this over again. I probably should have pressed this a little better, but it'll work. And I'm going to pin it there. And then when you sew it, you'll have a stitch on the outside of the bag along this side panel. So I'll show you that. Okay, so I have only done half, but I'm going to show you how to sew it because I'm not actually going to do this method on my bag. I'm going to do the other method. And this one is much easier. I think it's easier to sew, but also easier to show you. Okay, so what I like to do now is kind of flip the bag a little and then start by sewing. So I've pinned the inside, the lining to this panel on the inside. Now I'm just going to top stitch. You can either do right in the ditch, or I would probably do just a little top stitch along this side panel underneath the D-ring. So just a little stitch right here, and then I back stitch at both ends. Okay, and then turn it back inside out and go ahead and do a stitch right along the stitch you've already created on the zipper tab piece. So I like to work from this side because this stitching is already kind of set, and just follow that stitching all the way along the curve. And then when you're done with that, you're going to get back to the side panel. So I'll back stitch right here at the end of the curve, turn it back inside out, right side out, sorry, and top stitch along this side panel under the D-ring again, turn it back, and then I haven't pinned this, but you'll continue stitching the same way you did the other side, stitching that lining to the zipper side. Okay, so that is how you do it, and when you get to the end, you can back stitch, clip all your threads, and just turn it inside out, and right side out, and your bag will be finished. So that is lining method 1, and that leaves you with a raw edge, but is pretty easy. Okay, so lining method 2 starts a little different, and I'll show you that. I'm gonna stop this. Alright, so hopefully you can see that. And then when you get to the other side of the side panel, so the side of the bag has a side panel, we're just going to do exactly what we did before, and that is fold that edge over and pin it again. Now at this point, I probably want to clip this zipper and some extra threads. Should have done that before. Okay, so I'm turning this over again. I probably should have pressed this a little better, but it'll work. And I'm going to pin it there. And then when you sew it, you'll have a stitch on the outside of the bag along this side panel. So I'll show you that. Okay, so I have only done half, but I'm going to show you how to sew it because I'm not actually going to do this method on my bag. I'm going to do the other method. And this one is much easier. I think it's easier to sew, but also easier to show you. Okay, so what I like to do now is kind of flip the bag a little and then start by sewing. So I've pinned the inside, the lining to this panel on the inside. Now I'm just going to top stitch. You can either do right in the ditch, or I would probably do just a little top stitch along this side panel underneath the D-ring. So just a little stitch right here, and then I back stitch at both ends, okay? And then turn it back inside out and go ahead and do a stitch right along the stitch you've already created on the zipper tab piece. So I like to work from this side because this stitching is already kind of set, and just follow that stitching all the way along the curve. And then when you're done with that, you're going to get back to this side panel. So I'll back stitch right here at the end of the curve, turn it back inside out, right side out, sorry, and top stitch along this side panel under the D-ring again, turn it back, and then I haven't pinned this, but you'll continue stitching the same way you did the other side, stitching that lining to the zipper side. Okay, so that is how you do it, and when you get to the end, you can back stitch, clip all your threads, and just turn it inside out, and right side out, and your bag will be finished. So that is lining method 1, and that leaves you with a raw edge, but is pretty easy. Okay, so lining method 2 starts a little different, and I'll show you that. Alright, so the second lining method is a little bit trickier, but I'm going to show you how to do it. It's also included in the pattern file, but it's just easier, I think, on video to show you. So if you're a little confused by the pattern file, this video is for you. So I have both my lining and my main pieces inside out, okay? And what we're going to do is we're going to match the top curve, so I'm calling this the top curve, along the lining and the side panels to the same pieces on the main fabric, and those pieces are already sewn. So we're really just attaching that fabric where I showed you to the side panel and along the curve. So we're just working here with the zipper panel. And since this is already finished, we are attaching the lining to this seam and these side seams, and then the other side. Okay, so what you're going to do is hold your bag out. We're working with these seams, and then these are going to match together, and it's going to look kind of like they're kissing. Okay, so we're going to do right sides together. This is the side panel piece to the side panel piece. And then I like to clip it as I kind of get everything aligned. So I'm going to clip this here. So that's the side to the side, okay? So side to the side. Side panel, side panel. And then your curved piece right here is going to match up with the curved piece on your main bag. Okay, so this is this zipper side piece with that raw edge right there, and I'm attaching the lining, the main piece of the lining to that. Okay, now I'm gonna clip it real quickly, and then I'll go back and adjust it and make sure everything is set before sewing. So the zipper is open, and these main bags are being attached at the zipper side, lining to the zipper side lining. A little so you can see a little better. So these are kind of, they're going to be both inside out while we're doing this. So it's going to look a little bit funny, but when we're done, we'll tuck it all in, and it will be just right. So the most important parts are to get right at first are the side panels, right where the side panels go and where they meet the zipper side. So if you have those spots correctly aligned, then you can make sure the rest of the bag goes together smoothly, but that'll be the most important. And then so I've attached the side here, the second side, and now I'm going to go ahead and attach the second side of the lining to the zipper side again. And I think once I have this all attached, I can show you from a little bit further away, and I think it'll make sense. Okay, so I'm going to hold this up, and you can see that I'm holding the main bag, and the lining is just at the top, or the bottom. Top of the bag, but the bottom of the screen here. So the lining is here, the main bag is here, so they're just being attached right sides together at the lining side panel and main piece attached to the main side panel and zipper side. Okay, so it's like some of my testers said it's like they're kissing. See that? All right, so now I'm gonna fix everything. So I'm gonna go through and just make sure it's all lined up correctly, pull the e-stitching if I need to, and then I'm going to sew along both curved sides, so both zipper sides and one side panel. Okay, so we'll use that space on the second side panel to turn the bag right side out, and then we'll finish it either by hand or by machine. So I'm going to do that, and I'll probably speed this up so it's not super boring. Okay, so I've gone through and just realigned the pins to get the pieces pinned really well, or clipped really well, so that everything is lined up how it should be. And now I'm going to go ahead and sew these two seams on the sides, and the two curved seams and one side panel seam. So I'm going to start at the side panel that I'm leaving open, sew all the way around to the other side, and then I'm going to have to pick up and pivot my needle, sew this side panel, and then go ahead and do the other curved side back to the first side. Okay. two pieces together. And I'm going to show you again how it looks so that you can get it right. So if you were to push the lining into the bag, you would see that the lining fits in there, and their linings attached at the top curved pieces. So the main pieces of the main bag are attached to the lining. So they just fit right in there. And that actually might be an easier way for you to visualize it as just being wrong sides together, both bags. So I've sewn up from the side curve. So I sewed, oh, I left that one open. So this one's open for turning. I sewed this seam all the way down here. I had to pivot, pick up my needle and pivot into the corners to get that seam sewn, the side panel, and then back up again on the other side. So right on the inside of this is the zipper panel, and now I'm going to turn it through the open side panel, the space I left open. So this is what your bag is going to look like right now, and now we'll turn it. So this is the fun part. It's okay if some of the stitching comes out. We'll fix that. You don't want too much to come out. Okay, so this is just going to look like a big ball. Once you start getting it through, it'll be a little easier. If you have a really thick fabric, you may need to undo some of your stitching and redo it by hand after. But this velvet's fairly pliable, so it's okay. Okay, so still pushing it through. Okay, so once you have the main fabric on the outside, you can see what's going on. So this is the seam we just did. So there's no showing seam allowance. I do need to pull out some of that E-stitching, but I'll do that at the end. So you have a nice pretty lined bag, super pretty. And then on this side that we did already sew, this has a nice finish as well. There's some stitching I need to clip. Okay, but on the open side, the last step is to turn that stitching over where you have E-stitching. So in the instructions, you've already put E-stitching in there. And then you're just matching that up, like in method 1, with that seam allowance that's right there. So pins work best for this step. I'm going to pin it right along there till it's closed. And when I was turning the bag, some of my side stitching pulled out, which is fine. You can just pin it back there too. And then you can actually top stitch this closed with your machine if you want, or use the hand needle to do a ladder stitch to finish that part. So you'll have a fully lined, fully clean bag lining. If you do top stitch, you'll want to do it from the outside and just sew like in method 1 right along there. And that is your finished bag. So I hope that video was helpful. I will try to do videos for any patterns that are a little bit tricky, but there is that pretty weekender bag. So my daughter has already claimed this one. But yeah, so you can find more information on this bag pattern and pattern of the month in the links below. And I hope you love it.